following issues may contain spoilers.
Next time we're attacked by starving rats, you stand your ground with a piece of paper, and I'll have a rock, and we'll see who gets their guts ripped out first. I'm Anthony.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Jim.
Welcome to issue number 254 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. This mask is way too small for my face, so I will put that on later. This is issue number 254. Welcome to the podcast. This is where we talk about comic books. We have many segments on this week's show. We're going to kick it off with a club discussion in which we're going to talk about the one-shot special of Archie versus the world. And just when you thought there couldn't be enough apocalyptic discussion going on, we're going to talk about issue number 3 about Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. And then we're going to do our weekly reviews. That's where we go back and forth and we talk about the books that we've been reading, whether they're new, whether they're old. We're going to talk about them here. So that is going to be the lineup for this show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let's jump into this. We are going to jump right into our discussion for a one-shot issue here of Archie versus the world. In a post-apocalyptic future, our hero Archie Andrews is cursed to walk the world alone. Well, alone with his souped-up jalopy. But Archie can defend himself. In fact, he's the master of a brutal, deadly form of martial arts and must use his skills when he comes face to face with his rival, an evil mirror image, Reggie. This action-packed one-shot is equal parts Mad Max Fury Road and the Fist of the North Star, and reunites the Jughead's the Bulgarian team from the 2022 smash hit comic, The Best Archie Comic Ever. All right, this issue here is done by Aubrey Sitterson, Jed Doherty. I just want to double check. Yep, Jed Doherty, Matt Herms, Doug Garbark, and Jack Morelli. All right, so this here is another series of these one-shots from Archie Comics. Archie Comics over the last 10 years has been pretty good with just doing all these crazy mashups and taking these classic characters from the 1940s and constantly reinventing them into different genres, so much so that the Archie horror line has gotten so successful and gotten so many spin-offs, things that have led to TV shows and just inspiring more comics. And now this is definitely one of those series that this is a one-shot, but this is definitely one of those ideas that I think maybe a couple years ago, even pre-pandemic, that this could have maybe been introduced as like a 6 to 12 issue mini series. But what we're going to talk about here is how this one issue is basically just it feels like a great concept pitch overall of just here's the idea of this apocalyptic scenario with the Archie characters, and we pretty much just kind of get it all kind of taken care of and cover all the bases in one issue. So yeah, we're going to go back and forth, talk about what we thought of this issue here. I will kick it off here. The one thing I want to highlight is not only are you getting a lot of cool Easter eggs throughout with a bunch of different Archie characters throughout the decades, just kind of seeing where they fit into this scenario, but there is one specific Easter egg I wanted to call out that I just got so excited for. It makes me just want to see more. I basically want to see more issues of every chapter that we got within this issue. But there is one moment throughout this book where it's just basically just kind of covering. It's about halfway through the book, and it's just kind of showing all the stuff that these characters were going through here. But we see a little meeting here of Betty, and we have like a space commando type of character. If you aren't familiar with who this character is, he is Cosmo, the Merry Martian, who was published within Archie Comics way back in the 1950s. And when I saw that character just standing there and just like a one, throwaway panel where Betty's fixing their ship, that was such a cool thing because this character is just done in a very cartoony fashion. back in those original comics. But yeah, I was just blown away when I just saw that little character represented. Here's a good shot of him in the back here too. Um, so yeah, that was the one thing I kind of wanted to call out is just all the fun little Easter eggs throughout this issue. Um, the overall story is talking about how they're kind of wondering how they got to this point, whether it be the Great War or essentially, things that happened to the Earth and climate change and all this stuff is kind of suggested in kind of the opening narrative from Jughead. And that spins off into seeing how Archie and Jughead were kind of cast away, kind of went into their own little adventures, but they're coming back to Riverdale for a very specific person and purpose. And we see who's been kind of running Riverdale and where all of our main characters, how they've kind of separated throughout this apocalypse. So that's kind of the overview there. But yeah, I absolutely dug it. Like I said, the Easter eggs for me was just an awesome, awesome thing to seek out. And then what I wanted most out of this was that this was a great like elevator pitch for a grander series. So I'm hoping that this does well and we get some more and they explore this little pocket universe a little more. All right, let's jump over to Kirby. Any thoughts on Archie versus the World?
Yeah, I love the whole Mad Max parody here throughout it. My favorite thing was probably seeing Josie and the Pussycats all gored out, wearing their dinosaur skulls on their head or whatever saber-toothed tiger skulls they got. If you don't know the Archie world, you don't know the Archie characters, this might be hard for you to follow because they bring in everybody, well, not everybody, but a good majority of the main characters in here. I like how they did the whole Thunderdome with Cheryl. That's Cheryl Blossom, right?
Yep.
And who's basically playing Whitney Houston's role there from the third Mad Max movie. And then the whole thing bringing in the Sabrina's into the mix and stuff. But yeah, it was fun. If you like that post-apocalyptic stuff, there's tons of little things you can find in here. You look hard enough, there's even a Chewbacca in here.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was looking at, that especially that page, because I was looking being like, all right, what other little references? And I don't know if that was a specific, like, if there was anything other than like, yeah, it is kind of like a Wookiee, or if it was just some random thing to.
Yeah, I think it was just a random thing they threw in there. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. If you don't know the world, it might be a little confusing to you. So
Yeah, I think you'll still be in for it for just the elements of like, all right, there's just this big, the art's great and just the world they're setting up and everything's basically just on fire. But yeah, just the specifics. Like, one thing that Archie Comics is good is that when they do these reimaginings through the Archie horror and things like this, even with the TV show Riverdale, they still stay true to the characteristics of the character. For instance, with Betty Cooper, that she's always been, like a tomboy character. She's always like fixing Archie's jalopy in the comics and things like that. And she's one that Archie goes to during this to help out. And you see that moment that I mentioned with Cosmo, the Merry Martian, fixing the ship and stuff like that. So like, all these characteristics, Reggie you have as the villain, Moose is in here. It's just, just big old Moose. He's always just big old Moose. And so of course he's, fighting it up in here. But yeah, if you aren't too familiar with the Archie characters, yeah, I think there's a lot more on the page to enjoy.
the one I had a question you answered was Cosmos, so that helped me out.
Yeah, because it is a pretty, like, other than that possible Wookiee, that is like the one other thing that's really just kind of, just kind of random, like, whoa, what the heck is this? But I went through my stacks and sure enough, I had and they've done some new, iterations of the Cosmo character. And this collection actually collects all the original issues, which I think were six issues from the 50s, and then it also has at least one issue of a modern day Cosmo, redesign, reinvention. But
Yep.
Jim, you also read this issue. Thoughts on Archie versus the World?
Yeah, I got a lot of the Easter eggs. I'm sure not quite as many as you did, but I did love, first of all, the jalopy, that they kept the old jalopy going. That was great. And then other than that, I think my favorite part was the three Sabrinas playing the triad of witches, Mother, Maiden, and Crone. That was great. And then on that big page where they show all the different scenes that's together in a splash, that Pops is a like the recreation vehicle from Stripes.
Stripes has been on my rewatch list for quite some time, but that's cool.
The armored recreation vehicle. That's
Did you
what that
say
looks like to me.
Anything else?
And I don't know if that flame fighting style has any reference other than just being cool in the moment, but that page was pretty awesome.
I assume bulky Archie and everything is based off Street Fighter.
Well, there's that. So I'm not familiar with it. It was in the synopsis, and Eric mentioned it last week off air, I think it was, about the movie that the other inspiration. I'm trying to find it here. Where is it? The Fist of the North Star. So Archie has this, these powers that we also see Reggie kind of has too, and I'm assuming that's where that stuff is coming from. I think that was like a movie or like animated thing or something. I'm just not familiar with what that is, but
Fist of the North Star is an animated movie. I just don't remember anybody being bulked up and fighting in there like that. I just took Archie more as the Ryu character from Street Fighter. He's got that bulky, he's got the firepower, he's got all that. Whereas when you play the video games, you get those abilities. But I don't know.
Yeah, pretty crazy. A lot of great
anime style.
A lot of great splash pages.
Yeah, that's an awesome page.
Another thing I'm going to call out, because I've read this twice now, and the one thing I didn't catch the first time around is, so they kind of, like I said when I was talking about it, I said how they, I feel like they, it's like almost like a Cliff's Notes version of what this story could be if it was a 12-issue series. Like, there's definitely a lot of room for them to explore, when all this stuff went down, where all the characters, how they all split apart. But very importantly, a quick little scene talking about how Reggie and Archie had gotten in some sort of battle, and there was some sort of, thing that went down that led to what I didn't notice till the second reading, but the death of, hold on here, I just want to get the panel up there. Hold on. Darn light. Here we go. The death of Mr. Weatherby, the high school principal, and we do see the Riverdale High in the background too. But Archie is holding the dead body of Mr. Weatherby, and that was all addressed in this, what Reggie did and what Archie did, and they kind of gloss over on their initial beef. So I think there's just a lot of room in here for almost every chapter that they bring here. They could span that out for a couple issue story or so.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's
absolutely.
And yeah, so having Hot Dog in there, Jughead's dog, just riding along there for the fight. We got some Mr. Lodge, Veronica's captured. There's there's just a lot of good stuff. I just wanted more and more and more. Like I would buy, many issues of this story. But yeah, any other thoughts at all?
No, I liked it.
Yeah, satisfying as a one shot. Just it's kind of a fun little thing that they could just leave it here or go on more. But I think it accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time.
Almost too short, yeah, but yes,
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, like you said, you could
Do
easily
not have
make-
regrets about ordering that series now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that'll do it then. I was excited that other people were on board for that too. It's been a while, I think, since we brought an Archie book. I remember, I think in the storefront, Batman's here too. I didn't let Batman. Did you have any thing to say about Archie versus the World?
It was great.
Golly gee. All right. Well, I think that'll do it then. So that is Archie versus the World #1, a very post-apocalyptic take for a comic book. Well, this is a great timing because we also have another post-apocalyptic title to talk about. This is issue #3 of Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. Just as Mace and Mezzy manage to find a touch of laughter and whimsy in the toxic hellscape they are traveling through, a gruesome encounter changes both of them forever. Even though Mezzy has been able to protect her naive companion so far, there is no shielding him from what comes next, an encounter with the nightmarish Wasteland Rangers. This issue is done by Jason Aaron, Alexandre Tefenki, Lee Luridge, Nick Dragata, Rico Renzi, and Ann World Design. All right. Mason Mezzy, the two characters over the last couple issues who are now on this journey, kind of traveling through these wastelands. Yeah, they're basically both kind of teaching each other things, how to stay alive and how to survive and how to live life. All of these things are being explored, especially in this issue, as they do for the most part. We kind of breeze through their adventure as they're learning to get through these obstacles and have a little laugh. We'll probably touch on that later. But yeah, it's a good balance of seeing how these characters are going to work together as they head out on their adventure. And as we left the last issues, we've gotten these rangers that are tracking Mezzy, who used to be a part of their group, and they're kind of wondering why she ditched them. And they know that there is somebody who she had picked up, and so they know that she's not alone, and they're basically trying to stay hot on their trail and catch up to them. We see some very big moments happening in here. Dive a little more deeper in with Mace's backstory with the parents. We're just getting a little by little each time, and then as we've done too is getting a little glimpse of the future where Mace is much older and kind of leaving it very open for a lot of space in between them where this character ends up going. But so that's kind of the overall overview. And so what we'll do here, we'll jump into it, much like the other one here, and talk about our thoughts in issue #3. But we will kick it off here with Katie. So thoughts on issue #3 for Once Upon a Time at the End of the World.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Yes. So a great synopsis of this book that Anthony shared with us. Things, look like they're becoming a nice little romance between Mace and Mezzy, or at least Mezzy is less contemptuous of Mace. And we find out that Mace is an inventor, and he invents a rat-powered TV, which I think is actually a really good idea. And yes, they're surviving in the wasteland and helping each other to get through that ordeal. And it looks like things are going okay until they come across someone being who is in a state of actively dying. And Mezzy has to deliver the coup de grace to this individual. which is challenging for both of them. And we find out, it sounds like to me that Mezzy had never had to do anything like this before, but she wanted to protect Mace from finding that out because he is rightfully quite upset by that. And that sort of triggers Mace into feeling like he needs to toughen up a lot. So he decides to go out hunting. And that leads to, looks like the Wasteland Rangers have caught up to them. And leads us to think that nefarious things are now afoot. And we're going to learn more about this shadowy group. Just the image of this person with everything, including the kitchen sink, on their back, surrounded by these banditos with big knives and gas masks, is a pretty powerful image. Let's see. I think it was in this. Oh, it was the previous one. I wanted to mention in issue 2, there was a really touching moment where they celebrated Christmas, and I liked that quite a lot. That was actually in issue 2. And then we have a flash forward to a pretty jarring future where Mace appears to be an old man fighting these mutant alien monster things. Are they what the Wasteland Rangers look like under their suit? That's what I'm wondering. If the Wasteland Rangers are secretly mutant monsters. And Mace has gun hands, which, okay, that's interesting character development, from somebody being a sweetheart who wants to watch cartoons on a rat-powered TV to gun hands. Kind of digging that concept. Really cool work on the monsters in terms of their character design. I really enjoyed this. Like, post-apocalyptic is not my favorite genre, but I am still enjoying this anyway. I think it's a very compelling story. I want to learn more about the world and why it got to be this way, and more about Mezzy's past, because it seems like that's been hidden from us so far, and that's going to be a big reveal. And I like the friendship and the connection between the two main characters quite a bit, and how they balance each other out. I also kind of like how they flip like the stereotypical roles, where like Mezzy is the one who's really tough and Mace is the one who's a little more sensitive. So I thought that was a cool way to play that trope out. I feel like every adventuring duo has a tough character that's very brooding, but on the inside is secretly a great big softie, and a other character who's kind of a goofball and doesn't always fully like comprehend the danger that they're in, but they are capable of being very brave. They just don't know it yet. So I thought that was cool. This creative team had me pretty confident from the get-go that this would be a good series. I also enjoy the color work in here. So we have themes in this issue of yellow, blue, and then red for the future. So that's kind of a cool nod. Anyway, I've really enjoyed it. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, you had mentioned how they had come across this person that was being attacked, and I don't even want to show the image because it's gruesome.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Yeah, the description of this character basically being attacked by these rats, and just like one of them just in this person's eye, and it's just like that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's wild stuff.
But then like the immediate the reveal I think I like the most about Mezzy's character in this one is that while Mace wants to help this person because they're asking for help, but at least I thought this as well as Mezzy about like, oh no, they're begging for them to finish him off, basically put him out of his misery, and that's when she stabs him right away. But they talk a lot about lies and truths that they've been talking to each other, because after that moment, that kind of it made it very quiet for them. It was a real serious moment, and we basically find out that while it feels like she would have done that many a times, like he predicted, that was the first person that she has killed.
Yeah, I thought that was good too.
Yeah, so just that reveal, that was pretty crazy, because you would expect her to be like, oh yep, this is just another day that she's used to, but it's like, oh no, that even though she didn't hesitate, it definitely affected her. So
Yeah, absolutely. It added a lot of emotional depth and conflict to the characters that I thought was very well done. I was going to say well executed. I'm like, oh no, very well done.
cool. All right, let's jump over to Jim. Thoughts on this issue?
I pretty much can only agree with what you all said already. I kind of like the one panel where Mace is like, according to her, is wasting his time by burying this man. And then the next thing you see is her jumping in and shoveling with like a stick vacuum cleaner. And then he leaves his golf club that he used to fend off the rats as a grave marker. Now, I thought that was like this little vignette was a touching moment there. And then, of course, the night when they're talking to each other and he gets up and leaves. And then they had a little bit of a comedy and right before the drama where he tries to shoot these animals with a slingshot, and we see the rock or whatever he has goes bing, 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 bonging all over the forest.
Yeah, turns into a little cartoon little moment there.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments. And then I have to say, the very, very first page, I had to go back and look at the creative team and see if they made a change, because the style was just a little bit, not totally different, but just more of a pixelation, more of a, like that stippling effect that we have seen before. And it was like, yeah, they put a lot of time into that page.
Yeah, I was looking at that and I was just like, if I was doing that, I'd be like, all right, select, copy, paste.
Well, maybe that's.
But I'm curious. But then there are those artists that go in with those details, and I'm just saying my shortcut around it. But I'm assuming with people of this talent that they probably drew each one individual. So yeah.
And I'm looking forward to. My guess is that these people in the future panels are what the boy Rangers we see now turn into. But I guess we'll find out as the issues unfold.
Yeah, definitely a lot to learn about this gap in time that we're jumping to. Jump over to Kirby. Thoughts on issue 3?
I liked it. I did not like the first half because they talk about it like they've been traveling forever through all these wastelands and stuff. Well, you could have made that into 3 comics. Then we could have seen the journey and see what they all did instead of just pushing right towards the end part. And I like your Katie and Jim's thoughts on the characters at the end. I didn't think about that being those Boy Scouts or whatever they are, but when you look at them, they have their normal flesh around their eyes and the rest of it's moved, and they're obsessed with peeling the flesh off everything. And I'm guessing kind of body part collectors. And the thing I noticed was, I'm curious about the old lady in the cart, because I didn't have the last issue to go back on to double check, but when you see her in this issue, it almost looks like her face has no eyes. So I'm curious.
That's a really good point.
I'm guessing they are some type of skin wearer type people. But
oh my gosh, you're right.
I'm definitely digging where they're going with this. I just feel like they're rushing it a little bit. I think it could have been drawn out. And then what's up with the rats? I mean, they'll eat candy till they're content. Eat a few rats. Get some protein in your system. It's like, and same with the guy that they found and with his dog being eaten by rats and stuff. Yeah, he was probably screwed, but he was able to physically turn his whole body from back to front. So at least give the guy a chance before you finish him off. Go ahead.
Yep. So Jim on his screen here is looking back on the previous issue, and we do have the brim of her hat casting a shadow across her eyes, but it seems very strategic.
Yeah, it's always covering it for some reason.
When I saw him hold that up, I was switching the views on my screen to see it bigger, and I'm just like, by the time I get it, all of a sudden he's going to put it down. But no, we made it.
Yep.
And then, so the rats, you think they could be used a little more? And
yeah, I mean, everybody. I mean, it's the only real protein that's out there that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, go for it, other than the crab and stuff like that. But, and then, I mean, the story's over. I mean, Messi's getting skinned alive at the end of this issue, and they got the skin people attacking here. Maseo in the future, so it's like, I guess it's over.
Mezzi has a moment that when they're watching the TV that's powered by the rats, they're watching the cartoons, and they talk about how this is the 17th time they've seen this particular cartoon, and she starts laughing, and then she's like, "What the F was that?" She's like, "That noise I just made. Something's wrong with me," and just realizing, oh yeah, it's called laughing. It's called laughing.
And are they carrying this heavy TV with them, or are they just finding a new TV every time?
Oh, that's actually a good question.
I mean, with the size of that backpack, that Reese Witherspoon wild size backpack, I think this is the third time I got that reference in.
I mean, just the amount of umbrellas she pulled out, that would fill the backpack.
Yeah, it definitely has kind of like what Jim was mentioning with the hunting scene, and then the backpack. Like, there are a few cartoony moments that are kind of, some comic relief in there and stuff too, but it still has some very gruesome stuff going on, but
has like an interdimensional portal inside the backpack that you put as much stuff as you can in it.
Yeah, it's a Mary Poppins scenario.
Yep.
I was going to just say
Mrs. As the Mary Poppins cover.
Oh yeah, it does kind of look like Mary Poppins.
Oh, I got a different one.
Yep.
A Mary Poppins, y'all. All right. Cool. Any other thoughts for issue number 3? Superman, what do you think of this issue? Man, we're getting the whole Justice League in here now. And people that who are just audio only or not checking this out on YouTube, you are missing some shenanigans, I tell you. But yeah, another great issue. I'm totally digging this series, and I'm on board. So I'm in for the long haul on Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, number 3. All right. And then before we jump into our next segment, we will do a quick reminder, because we do have some upcoming club discussions. The further issues of The Punisher with issue number 10, the final issue of this initial run of Berserker with issue number 12. Matt Kint was just on Comic Book Club Live, the podcast, and they had asked about the status of the final issue. He goes, well, he's like, I'm pretty sure it's coming out in March. He's like, it's done. He goes, I've seen all the pages. He goes, yeah, it should be in March. He's doing a lot of things. So that issue should be coming out in March. So it's good to know that those pages are done. Slowpokes 2, the Kickstarter sequel to Slowpokes. We are waiting for some backer rewards yet before I get my copy. I do have it digitally, but I'd much rather show off all the goodies. Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer special number 1. It's Jeff number 1. And then, of course, future issues of Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. So those are some upcoming club discussions. But we're going to move on to our next segment, and that is the weekly reviews. All right. If this is your first time watching us on YouTube because you finally gave in after all these in-episode advertisements, you are seeing the behind-the-scenes magic where it doesn't seem like anything is going on. You just maybe see my eyes darting around from left to right, that is because I am saving the GarageBand audio, and then I am hitting record on the GarageBand audio to start a new file. And then before I talk about the next thing, you're going to see me take a swig. And there we go. So that is all the magic of the audio version editing. So here we go. We are going to jump into the weekly reviews once my window is set up. Here we go. Welcome to the weekly reviews. First one on my list here is a graphic novel called Always Never. After 40 years of being madly in love, Anna and Zeno are finally retiring and giving their romance a chance to bloom while they both still have time left. A unique but relatable love story told in reverse, with each chapter stepping further back through the decades of touch and go courting, showing both the heartbreaking moments that kept the two lovers apart and the beautiful moments that kept their flame alive. This isn't a tale of misconnections and regret, but rather a story of celebrating the complexities of family, responsibility, destiny, and how love persists across time with complete disregard for all of that. This is done by Jordi Lefebvre, Clemency. I think there's an autocorrect there, so I want to go to my actual copy. Yep. Clemence Sapin and Montana Kane. There we go. So I had a couple autocorrects in there and a couple autocorrects out of my mouth as I tried pronouncing that. All right, so here we go. This is a graphic novel. A lot of times when I buy graphic novels out of the previous catalog, I am very much judging a book by its cover. If I'm not familiar with the creators, I see a cover, I see a title, and this one here has two characters that are kind of walking in the rain. Their umbrellas are almost kind of in a heart shape in a way, and had a nice little reflection across the bottom. And I'm sure I read the synopsis back in summer when I pre-ordered it, because this did come out in fall, I believe. I just pulled it out of my stack to read. So I went in completely blind, jumping into this. This is an adaptation. This is the English translation, rather. So this book I liked very much, and I would actually track down the original language of it as well, because that's how much I dug it. So when I opened this up, it got me even more excited for this because it begins with chapter 20. So once that happened, I was just like, well, that's intriguing. I showed a friend of mine and she was just like, wait, but what if you have book 2? Because I told her how I jump into like graphic novels blind sometimes. I'm like, I'm guessing it's probably going to be a story in reverse, the Benjamin Button of love stories here. And that's what happens. So we have our two characters, Anna and I want to get the pronunciation here, Anna and Zeno. Anna and Zeno are at the end of this story, at the beginning of this graphic novel. You see them meeting at a specific spot. It's raining. It's reflecting the cover in some ways, even though they are the young versions in the cover. And we just see them talking about kind of finally having this time together. And as we go through the chapters, there are some big leaps and there's some small leaps from the time. So they mention right away in chapter 20 about her hair being cut and like, how do you like my hair? And then in chapter 19, we just step back a little bit further as she is actually getting her hair cut. But there are bigger leaps as the story goes on, as we find out that these characters basically have kind of spent 40 years of their life since they met each other, basically waiting until they were both retired, because they both had individual goals for life, whether that be career, whether that be family. One character was off on basically adventures and being like a fisherman and kind of going port to port and kind of having a more a travel life, while the other one preferred to stay at home and hunker down and start a family, and also be, I think, the mayor, being elected mayor and re-elected mayor time and time again as the decades go on here. And as the chapters keep progressing, they keep going forward back in time, and and it really made it exciting to see kind of what their original meet and greet was going to be. I'm not going to talk about everything here, so I am trying to keep it pretty vague for anybody that likes the concept. But the one thing that I really dug was that their relationship. You see how they kept in touch basically through phone calls and just handwritten letters, and it's a struggle back and forth, and you kind of see moments of ups and downs and reasons. It really makes you anticipate what led to this 40-year friendship and romance, on how they met, and how that basically led them to be apart for literally 4 decades. So the story just really continues to develop as it goes back to the beginning. And when I finish reading this book, again, I'm not going to talk about what exactly happens or how they got to meet each other. But when I read this chapter 1, which is the last chapter, I loved it so much that I reread chapter 20, and then I started comparing and seeing a lot of the similar images, except 40 years apart for time. This was just a beautiful romance book. This is exactly one of those recommendations for anybody who is not familiar, who thinks that maybe comic books are just for superhero titles, and there's so much more to the medium. I think this is a great example for anybody if you know that somebody is a big like romance novel reader and stuff like that. This is 100% an awesome recommendation that I think it's very easy. It's a nice flow with the dialogue and the letters and everything. So I don't think there's going to be. I think it'll be a great first comic book for somebody who is coming from the romance novel fandom. So yeah, this was awesome. Like I said, so much that I actually want to see if I can get my hands on original language copy, just to, even though it's most likely going to be the same art, but I like the book that much that it needs a companion, much like our lead characters there. But yep, the whole idea of going from chapter 20 to chapter 1, brilliantly done, and I could see myself rereading this time and time again. This is Always Never. All right.
I just looked up
Yes.
the writer on that, the creator on that, and they are Spanish born, but they're create in the Franco-Belgian comic market. So
Yeah.
you could probably have to learn to speak French to read that book.
Well, either that, or I'm going to meet a French person, and then they can read it to me, and then I'll look at their copy, and I know the story, so I can follow along. It'll be fun. So cool. Yeah, I'm definitely, and based off this creator, Jordi Lefebvre. I'm gonna have to look to see what else they've done too. Cool. All right, let's jump over to Kirby. What you got?
I got Fanboys versus Zombies, Wrecking Crew for Life. This is volume 1. One is a decrepit mob of gurgling, ravenous fiends, and the other is a zombie outbreak. When there is no more room in hell, the undead shall take over Comic-Con. A crew of feuding best friends find themselves trapped inside the largest comic convention in America, transformed into a seething cauldron of the undead. Written by Sam Humphries, with art by Jerry Gaylord. Fanboys vs. Zombies is a loving send-up of geek fandom with a perfect blend of quirky comedy and zombie-killing action. This collects issues 1 to 4 of the series. Join Rob, Jenna, Berger, and the rest of the Wrecking Crew as they fight their way through the zombie hordes and try to snake some con exclusives along the way. One of the characters is named Spock because he's always dressed up like Spock. Guess that's a better picture of him on the front cover there. But this is fun. It starts out with one of our characters eating a big old Chicago style dog or something like that, and he sets it on a table as he gets pulled away by one of his friends. And something happens to it where it gets this green ooze dumped on it. And then it just sits there at the table, starts to ferment, starts to bubble, gurgle, turn into something weird. And some character from the con just decides, oh, there's some free food. I'm going to go check that out and eat it because it looks delicious.
I was honestly going to be making cheese dogs tonight, but I might have to change my menu up now. So
Yeah, I would. But yeah, that pretty much sets off our little zombie apocalypse here. And the gang is basically starts out, someone comes up to, she thinks is coming to shake her hand, and she grabs his hand and his arm rips off. We got Missy Portman. I'm guessing that's a play on Natalie Portman in here. There's Masterson is a action star that joins up with the crew, and he's all wimpy because he's just an actor, so he's not truly an action hero. But eventually he finds his courage along the way, and once he gets a giant sword to play with. Find it in here. Kind of reminds me of the one from the one book we read with the big old god sword in it. I want to say crossover. Yeah.
Yep, crossover.
But yeah, it was fun watching them deal with it. You got a group of Dungeons and Dragons players that are alive for a little while fighting away, and of course I can't find a good picture of that at the moment. There's them all zombified playing Dungeons and Dragons at the table. But you also get, one of the characters gets bit, and he accidentally dumps this I think it's like a purple soda, because it reminded me of the one that Anthony was drinking last week.
Pitch Black Mountain Dew.
Yep. And he dumps it on his wound. There's his little bite on his arm. But once he dumps it on it, his wound kind of backs off and heals up a little bit. And so they keep dumping that soda on his wound as long as they can until they run out of cans, and eventually someone else gets bit too, and they're trying to save them along the way. But yeah, it's just fun seeing all the different characters just in cosplay, getting all zombified and attacking everybody in here. Of course, I'm just not finding any good pictures. There's kind of like a Superman character there that's all zombified up. But yeah, the art was fun in here. And I do have the second volume, which I'll be reviewing either next week or in 2 weeks, or I'm under the Cowl this next week. I haven't started reading it yet to see where it goes from the con, but it's just, they did a good job just keeping it all contained into the whole con area. But once they do look out a window, they do see that the whole city is being ravaged by zombies. So it's not just them dealing with them. They got some fun artwork in the back. There's the little Batman parody, kind of reminding me of Mallrats more than Batman. It's just, and then there's a little kind of a map of a bunch of characters from the con in there, and just seeing what's going on. Well, it's all heck's breaking out and everybody's zombified. But yeah, it was a fun play on the whole zombie apocalypse inside a mall type play, but turned into a Comic-Con, and seen it done a few times. This is one of my favorite ones, just seeing the variety of different characters they played with and mixing in some of the artists and writers in here with the characters, the fans at the con. But yeah, check it out. Fanboys versus Zombies. I know they at least got 2 volumes, probably more. I think they went a lot further with this run. So
Cool. All right, so let's jump over to Katie. What you got for us?
All right, this week I have Hellboy, The Bones of Giants, number 1 of 4. We've been talking at the club about doing a read through of the Hellboy Library Edition, so I thought this would be a good way to prep and get excited for that. Apparently, this is an adaptation of a prose novel in the Hellboy universe. So that's pretty cool. It is by Mike Mignola, Christopher Golden, Matt Smith, and Chris O'Halloran, published by Dark Horse Comics. So in this book, Hellboy and Abe and other agents from the BPRD are on location in a Scandinavian country where they find a mysterious magical hammer that is imbued with the power of lightning. And so far, no one's been able to move it. But then when Hellboy picks it up, he has a vision, and it sees this hell world filled with monsters like a giant snake eating its tail and a giant wolf and people fighting. And then he is brought back to reality from this vision and finds that the hammer is now fused to his hand. He couldn't put it down even if he wanted to. So they're like, well, that's very weird. And then all of a sudden, Hellboy is not so much possessed, but sharing a space with the voice of what we presume is either the hammer or an old god who says, we got to go north. And they travel up north and they find a Norse temple that appears to have been ransacked. And so then, like all good Hellboy books, they're going to go and find an expert that they can talk to help them out with this hammer and why it's doing what it does. And at the end, there was, it might be a heel turn. We're not sure yet, but this expert flees his house in the middle of the night. And then Hellboy and Abe jump into action to chase after him, and we get to be continued. I really liked this. Hellboy does a lot with like our real world like stories and mythologies and unsolved mysteries, and I really like that aspect of it. I'm a simp for Abe Sapien, so like the fact that he was here made me very happy. Clearly they're going for Thor's hammer, and while obviously the Marvel adaptations are probably the best well-known interpretation of that in comic books, it has existed for thousands of years, and definitely cool to see Hellboy's take on it. I appreciated that idea very much. This was just fun. I really enjoyed it. Feels like a good classic Hellboy adventure. Looking forward to maybe grabbing the trade of this in the future and seeing what happens and finding out whether or not there actually is an old god talking through Hellboy, or what is actually going on there, and how these experts may or may not be connected and what their motives are. I enjoyed it. Great starting issue. Looking forward to the club read of Hellboy. And I will say, if you've never really read a Hellboy before and you just picked up this #1 issue, I think you'd probably follow along fine. You don't need to know a ton of Hellboy lore and backstory, although that does add some richness to it. But I enjoyed it. Another great entry into the Hellboy universe, one of my favorites in comics. That's Hellboy, The Bones of Giants, #1 of 4 from Dark Horse Comics. Check it out and join us on our Library Edition reread of Hellboy.
Yes, and we are hoping to start that probably around mid-February. More details to come, but we will be most likely doing it as a special video series. So look forward to that. And now you mentioned Abe Sapien and your love for Abe Sapien. So this is a product placement here. I highly recommend checking out the Art Baltazar Itty Bitty Hellboy plush of Abe Sapien. Cute little adorable plush. And then if you get an Abe Sapien, you might have to get a Hellboy too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
cool.
Another advantage to follow along on YouTube, to put images to the words I just described.
Cool. Shelly just came home with a book for me called Anno Dracula that has a foreword by Mike Mignola.
Oh, nice. I've read a few of those. You'll like it.
Cool.
I got a message from Shelly, speaking of her, where she called my Archie mask terrifying, by the way. So for those watching the YouTube, I don't know, this doesn't seem terrifying to me,
No,
but
that is a definite serial killer mask. That would make a movie. I could see it.
because it looks weird if I don't like look like Uncle Fester, because then you can just see the mask doesn't fit me and my beard hangs down. But if I turn into Uncle Fester, now it looks now it's perfect. Now it's not scary.
And it looks like Archie has a big bald spot at the back of his head.
Yep. All right, we are going to move on to the next one, which is something I don't know because I have to check. Jim, you didn't have anything, correct? Okay, we're good. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is me. I'm up. We are talking about Where Monsters Lie #1. I've got a double Dark Horse release because of, and then we just had Hellboy. As always, never this translation was done through Dark Horse. So here we go. Where Monsters Lie #1. Haven't you always wondered what slasher monsters, the masked home invasion family, the mindless unkillable monster, the serial killer trapped in a doll, haven't you just wondered what they do for those couple of years in between their murder sprees? Well, they're at Wilmhurst, which is a gated community in the middle of nowhere where they relax, or try to until they get the call to go out and kill again. This comic is done by Kyle Starks, Piotr Kowalski, Vladimir Popov, and Joshua Reed. All right. New Kyle Starks book. The recent one was the I Hate This Place. We had the first kind of arc of that. That was the recent comic. But this is the brand new Kyle Starks book, Where Monsters Lie. Has a very fun concept. And I'm like, you know what? I'll give it the one issue try. I didn't normally pre-order this one, but I figure why not? Now, right away, it starts with the a wanted poster, basically just giving us a cast list of our characters. We have this old lady, Zell, who is the lady that's basically in charge of this gated community. Bunch of houses there. You know, you're getting like a Desperate Housewives, but down south kind of vibe going on here. And she's kind of running the show, making sure everybody is in the up and up. And then we have characters of the Puzzle Man. We got Frankie and Pearl, which is Pearl has a little ventriloquist dummy. We got somebody who is known as the F Master. We have Richard the Clown. Got somebody named Pack Rat. We have Saint Julian, and we have Daniel Dawson. Daniel Dawson, who basically just has hair draped over the front of his face. I cannot confirm if that is a cousinette scenario or just for the photo. So this comic does not waste any time to jump into the action. We get a bunch of kids who are running away from this house, and we find out that they're trying to go to the nearest house to seek help because somebody is after them. And I'm not going to give away too much here, but I think this is the first couple pages to really sell how quickly this story escalates as these kids are basically met with a bunch of the murderers, the wanted people that I just mentioned. So we just get into a lot of gore and crazy, kills. All that stuff is happening right off the bat. And basically what we learn here, Zell, our lady who's in charge of everybody, kind of holds everybody for a little meeting. And here's our the guy with the hair draped over his face there. There's a lot of mysteries to some of these characters that we don't fully explore, but I want to read just that even though it got very gruesome very quick, there's a lot of comedy that's happening in between with these characters. And the clown character is sitting next to the guy known as F Master, and the clown just goes, Zell, why do I have to sit next to this guy? I hate sitting next to this guy. And she goes, I've told you 1,000,000 times, Richard, there isn't assigned seating. You can sit anywhere you like. So there's some real good comedy that just jumps, right off the bat here. But what she is going through is that she is mentioning about everyone sticking to the rules. They're wondering why these kids were even in this gated community and why they even had to go through and, commit these, attacks while they're kind of in the between times here of their actual planned out murders. As we go through the book, we learn a little bit how this is organized, where everyone is basically spending their time off coming up with their next big scheme. They're the puzzle master and what he's going to do next. We find what's going on with the F master and maybe a different career path possibly for this character. You really kind of jump into the psyche of some of these people. We do touch base with that with the why the kids ended up being there in the first place. So I'll leave the rest of that for anyone who is interested in reading this series debut. Yeah, I think that's all I'm going to mention there because I think that gives you a nice setup. But if you're into horror movies, the slasher movies, and your Freddys, your Jasons, your Michael Myers, all of that kind of stuff, you're probably going to want to pick up this book, and I think it would be a great comic to recommend to somebody who is a big horror movie fan that doesn't necessarily read comics. This is definitely a good entry point, a great story that I think is just perfect for an on-screen adaptation. Like, it's such a good concept that I could see this being a pretty big hit beyond the comic books as well. So I think it's a good way to get some more people into comics. Is just a crazy dark, scary, bloody, and a little bit funny story of Where Monsters Lie, issue number 1. Kirby?
Yeah, I don't know if I ordered it or not, because I think I might have decided to wait for the trade on it, but I'll find out this week when I get my DCBS box.
You definitely like it.
Yeah, I know I like the cover, so I was gonna get it. We got Klaus, The New Adventures of Santa Claus. An ageless ice queen commanding an army of robotic snowmen built of enchanted wood, an evil soda corporation hell-bent on trademarking Christmas itself at the behest of a dark doppelganger. It's all just another day in the life of Klaus, the man who became Santa Claus. Luminary author Grant Morrison, Eisner Award nominated illustrator Dan Mora, bring their lauded reinvention of Santa Claus fully into the 21st century with 2 modern tales of Claus saving Christmas from sinister threats that span dimensions. This collects Klaus and the Witch Hunter, or the Witch of Winter #1, and Klaus and the Crisis in Christmasville #1. This doesn't have a volume number on it. It's just got an X, but they have a bunch of these. So Shelley decided to pick one up, see if I'd like it, and I really did. I really enjoyed the way they did this version of Santa Claus. It's basically after the time of Santa, kind of, because the population just got too out of hand. He eventually started using other Santas to try and help him deliver presents. That got too tedious and they couldn't make it work with all the children in the world. Then they had to basically allow the parents to start becoming the new Santa Claus and all that. But he's still Santa Claus, even though he's not going house to house. He's taking care of some things on his own here and there, but he's not taking care of the whole world like he was once known for. The 2 stories intertwine together nicely because they're all basically based off this town called Christmasville or Winterville, something like that. But it's a town that's just full of Santa Clauses, just these psycho Santa Clauses, evil eyes, and they're running around kidnapping children, and they're basically working for the Ice Queen, and she's sucking the youth from the children and to keep herself alive. The characters that ran the Santa Village is a older gentleman that he's on his deathbed, and of course again I gotta start marking pages. But he's on his deathbed and his son's taking over the, you can see like Santa's marching on the streets and there. Okay. That water flowing through something. But I like how instead of reindeer, he's got himself a posse of white wolves that are his sleigh haulers. And he's got this one wolf, Lily, that's kind of just hangs in the sled with him, goes wherever he wants. Lily's immortal like him, but yet Lily keeps getting killed off or beaten close to death. You get to see the Ice Witch's minions are these like snowman type creatures, but they're all different sizes. I mean, they got normal size, they got giant sized ones. But the fun part that they did with that, she took over one of Santa's old workshops, still had some of the elves there. So she imprisoned the elves, made them work for her. Some of the elves turned on her side and some were still against her. But she also found Geppetto. And Geppetto, all he is anymore is a head and a heart. The rest of his body's made of wood. He made the rest of his body as his body parts failed. But his head and heart still going strong. So he's got his youth because of the magic, I guess, of Winterland areas and stuff. I can't explain all that. But apparently Santa Claus back in the day planted this huge forest of enchanted wood, and he used the Ice Queen cut down a bunch of the woods and made Geppetto carve her minions out of that wood. And that's how they got their special powers. I don't know how they're really mechanical. I don't see nothing mechanical to them because he basically carved them and then they turned into the beings that they are. But she they basically are under her spell. After he gets done making them, she can basically throw some spell on them to be able to control them. And we get to just see her trying to take over Santa Claus regions while he's also got this old guy that's dying that's kind of a vampire, I feel, at first. But then later on, we see this wolf character that one of our people that I thought were vampires becomes, and there's a big battle between them and the Ice Queen, and to try and save our Santa. Well, for him to try and save his Santa land because he's got his son that came back and wants to take over the town for him. There's the old guy there. There's a picture of him. There's his son that's going to take over Santa's village for him. And he's trying to make a deal, but his son doesn't really know what his grandpa really is, apparently. And he learns throughout this. But yeah, there's all kinds of twists and turns. I really like the him and Lily, the main white wolf, how they work together. I definitely want to get more of his books and read some more of these stories, but this was a lot of fun. Nice little twist on Santa Claus, and both stories intertwine nicely together. You get some nice, that's basically the cover art anyways. Some nice art pages in the back too, and then some sketch work and stuff that they did. It's just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Complete different look at the Santa Claus lore. And that's by Boom Studios.
Excellent. All right, let's jump over to Katie again. What you got for us?
Okay, I have Batman: The Adventures Continue, Season 2, Number 1. If you recall on the club, we read Batman: The Adventures Continue, Season 1 as a club pick, and it was definitely pretty fun. Check our back issues to hear about that. I picked this up because I did enjoy that run and was glad to see this at the shop. Just like a technical spec, I want to praise the paper they use. It's a thicker. It's like not quite newsprint, but I just really like the grade of this paper. So very cool. It starts out with a murder mystery involving one of the city's leading industrialists and the Court of Owls, which I was surprised by because that's a pretty dark, mature storyline, though it is one of the most well-known modern Batman storylines. I'm like, okay, interesting that they're adapting this for, what is it does list as ages 13 and up, but I would give this book to somebody like 10 and up. Personally, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Anyway, that's a cool detail. And then we jump into the ghost of Dead Man flying around, monologuing on his thoughts of life and death and eternity and the good and the bad of all of that. And then Batman is investigating this murder, and he calls resident expert on the Court of Owls and her father, the Vreelands, so Veronica Vreeland, and then her father. Does he have a title? I thought it was like Major or something. Major Major Vreeland. But her father is an expert and a big fan of the Court of Owls lore and has a bunch of artifacts. And we, from him, get the backstory of the Court of Owls, that they were a shadowy, secretive group in the early days of Gotham, and they hired assassins called the Talons. And then we'll see a big fight between the Talon and Batman and Veronica. And then Dead Man's ghost getting involved. And then the spooky thing is the Talon can see the ghost and he can talk to the ghost. So that's different. Little spooky stuff, but I kind of like that. Digging it. That's basically the review of issue 1. We have a little information back at the Batcave, and with assistance from Zatanna to try and investigate this ghost mystery and what this Talon may or may not be. I really liked this. I thought it was an engaging way to adapt the Court of Owls story. A lot of action. I appreciated that. Like the fights felt just very cool and very satisfying superhero fights. A good balance between, giving us lore and philosophy and keeping the story going. Of course, this is done in a slightly cartoony style. It mirrors Batman the Animated Adventure, or no, I got that backwards. It mirrors the Batman cartoons on TV, and it does have bright colors, which is where I feel like, okay, I'd give this to someone like, 9, 10 and up, because it just feels pretty inviting in terms of the color palette. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. I definitely would like to get more. I know there's several trades out. It was by Burnett, Dini, Templeton, and Kubina from DC, of course. That's Batman, The Adventures Continue, Season 2, number 1. Grab the trade at your local comic shop.
Zoink, Scoop. All right. Let's jump over to the next one here. Highly anticipated new miniseries for the Silver Surfer. This is Ghostlight, number 1. Tony Brooks and her family have moved into the quiet town of Sweetwater, but nothing is quite what it seems in their new home. What mystery did Tony and her family unravel that would call upon the sentinel of the spaceways, the Silver Surfer? And just who or what is Ghostlight? This comic is done by John Jennings, Valentine Delandro, Matt Milla, and VC's Joe Sabino. All right, new Silver Surfer book here. Obviously, I'm all in no matter what. What's awesome about this first issue is that, I'm not going to talk about everything, but I will let Silver Surfer fans know that like 95% of this first issue really has nothing with the Silver Surfer as far as the character. It does a lot of world building with our main character of Tony Brooks, who is moved into this new home with her mom, her dad, her brother, and they're kind of thrown into Sweetwater, New York, and kind of she's pretty, it's the classic idea of being, thrown out of your, your normal place where you grew up and you're not with your friends, and you're in a a boring town. So you get a lot of that world building of the kids kind of adjusting to this new home. You've got the mom and the dad, and you also have the grandma, which is also referred throughout the issue as Big Mama. So Big Mama is staying with them, and they essentially get the house through. I believe it's the mom's brother who had passed away. This guy named Al. Uncle Al had passed away, and it's sort of a mystery on what happened to Al, but they eventually get the house, and it works great for their situation of having enough room for everybody as well as Big Mama. And yeah, so like you could read this whole thing and just kind of keep looking at the cover, just being like, wait, this is a Silver Surfer book? What's going on here? I'm not saying that as a criticism because I absolutely loved it. I love these kind of setups, especially knowing it's a surfer book, on how it's going to connect. And I like the slow build. Basically, this story is setting up sort of like a suspense thriller type of atmosphere. This Sweetwater town hosts a festival every year. Um, Talking about the annual Sweetwater Gap Festival. They talk about that there's a gap of time. I think it's a day. I don't know if it's a week. I forget. I think it's a day where there's this mystery of Sweetwater, and people have no memory of what happened on a specific day. And there's sort of this kind of small town celebration festival, and it's kind of like your alien days type of thing. You have some Roswellian type of influence going on with the story. But these kids are basically want to know a little more about the uncle that I don't think they've ever met. They want to figure out, like, well, nobody knows how our uncle died, and when the parents tell them, when they're staying home alone, when the parents tell them, like, well, just remember, stay out of the shed that's in the backyard. Yeah, we know. Well, obviously, that's going to be the biggest invite to go check out that shed and see what's going on in there. So at that point, that is when I'm going to stop talking about what this comic does. But there's one huge element which I am going to lightly talk about, but it's not going to really influence too much of what's happening in this story. So as I'm reading about this character, I just want to get the name correct here before I go further. The uncle. The uncle is Al Harper, and throughout the issue, I'm hearing this name, Al Harper. I'm like, all right, Silver Surfer's barely showing up in this first issue. But I'm like, this Al Harper, this name, it sounds familiar. And for those that don't know, I have all of the Silver Surfer comics, and I'm pretty much constantly doing a giant read/reread. I don't have any specific goal. I kind of, pick out volumes here and there, and I casually, I stretch it out throughout time. But this name was so familiar. I'm like, I know what this name is, but I'm trying to place it where I've read it before in the Marvel lore. So I did a quick little Google search, and it told me that this Al Harper character showed up in one issue back in 1969, back in April of 69, in the first volume of Silver Surfer's original run. It was done by Stan Lee and John Buscema. And they said this character appeared in issue number 5. So I've got the original copy of issue number 5 of the Silver Surfer from the late 60s. And when I caught a glimpse and I started opening this up, all the memories started flooding back. I'm like, well, I know who this guy is. And so I reread issue number 5, and this character, Silver Surfer, had crashed into the house of this Al Harper. And Al Harper, who is a physicist, is kind of an inventor, a scientist. He has, all of these qualities that the Silver Surfer learns, and he's like, he finds out that Al can actually help the Surfer try to break the barrier of Earth, because this is during the period of when Silver Surfer first showed up in comics, and he was basically banished from the cosmos and was forced to live on Earth for what ended up being a decade, per Galactus's wishes for Silver Surfer betraying Galactus. So this Volume 1 series mostly takes place during Silver Surfer's trapped time on Earth. And 5 issues in, he's at that point where he's still just trying to find a ways, how can I break this barrier? And once I started flipping through this, I remember this is the first time that Silver Surfer dons the classic like Ninja Turtles type disguise, even though this comic came out, a couple decades before the Turtles were even created. But I always call it the turtle disguise, where he got the trench coat and the hat. Ben Grimm does a lot of that for the thing. And once I started seeing those images, I'm like, oh, I remember all this, because this is Al Harper's clothes. While Al Harper was going to work on this device to try to help the Surfer, they needed some money. So Surfer's like, well, I need a disguise. He's going to walk amongst the people for the first time, and he's in disguise, so he's not really getting too much flack. People aren't, Silver Surfer is a very new character. He's only been around for 2 to 3 years in comics at this point. So this is the first time he's really walking among humanity without being judged, basically, for being, this silver alien, the silver freak. And he's out there to try to get some money. He ends up doing some gambling so he can win some money. He uses the power cosmic to ultimately try to, turn the dice a certain way to help win some riches, so he can bring it back to Al Harper, and they can pay for his research and the devices they want to do to try to free the Surfer. So they have this whole adventure, but then there's this one giant thread, one giant centerpiece of this original Surfer issue on what is going to put Silver Surfer and Al Harper together, to work together to basically try to save the planet. Now, that is where I'm going to stop it there, because I don't know what further issues of the current Ghostlight comic are going to reveal. I imagine issue 2 is probably going to cover some of the stuff that I may have mentioned. But for those that haven't read the new issue, haven't read the original issue, which I'm sure is available on Marvel Unlimited if you're interested, I'm not going to talk about this, but essentially what these creators did, whether it was the writer, whether it was the editor, I want to find out, because I think this is such a brilliant idea, that in a 2023 Silver Surfer comic book, they took a character from 54 years ago in the comic books, and who had a one issue appearance, and they're like, you know what, let's tell some more of that story. And that was such a brilliant setup. My mind was kind of blown as I'm kind of learning this new family, and they created this whole backstory for this character's family that we don't get to see in this original comic. And I could not be more excited for a second issue. So that was an excellent launch to the Silver Surfer with Silver Surfer Ghostlight issue number 1. Now, because it is Silver Surfer, I often do buy multiple covers, because recently he mostly has either one shots or very short miniseries, so I can justify it a little more. But they also have Planet of the Apes months going on, so I picked up the Planet of the Apes crossover variant. Now, Planet of the Apes number 1 is coming out from Marvel Comics in the coming months. We'll talk about them in our previews episode eventually. But to kind of do a fun little celebration, has nothing to do with the story, but there's a lot of cool covers. There's a Scarlet Witch comic that I think I can reach if you just hang with me for a little bit and maybe see some comedy if I fall over here. And I got it. So there's a Scarlet Witch Planet of the Apes variant 2 that I picked up that was pretty awesome. So yeah, if you're a fan of Planet of the Apes and you want some random covers where they mash them up with comic characters, I highly suggest it. But yes, Silver Surfer Ghostlight number 1. Awesome first issue. I cannot wait. It'll definitely be, issue 2 will definitely be the first on my pile when it comes out in a month. There it is. Kirby.
Zombicide, day 1, number 1. Yesterday, the world moved apace with its usual flow of ups and downs. Life was normal, predictable, and completely unprepared for the madness that would strike today. Everyone was caught flat-footed for the dead coming back to life. Everyone except Ned, that is. Ned saw the chaos coming and now finds a grim vindication for the years spent preparing a safe shelter to accommodate him and his friends. At least those friends who survived long enough to reach it. There's an entire city full of cannibalistic zombies that must be crossed. Ammo is scarce, supplies too. They'll have to move silently to keep hidden from the horde. And if needed, strike hard and put these zombies back in the grave. I didn't know this was a Kickstarter, but I have to look it up now because apparently if you do the Kickstarter, each book will also come with a sweet added bonus for fans that particular franchise in the form of new characters and cards to use in the game, complete with their own stylish miniature. For Zombicide, each unlock will feature a survivor figure and ID cards. And so far, that line, they give a name of a bunch of the characters from the first lineup. But yeah, I didn't know that there's a Zombicide game coming out and stuff. So I'm going to have to look into the Kickstarter more and see what's up with the next. I have the next two already ordered, I believe. Can't remember if it goes Zombicide day 2 next, and then number 2, and then day 3, number 3. Could possibly do that because this is one whole day's event here in this first comic. But yeah, our Ned character, he's cruising around in this truck that has words painted all over that say that the end of the world is coming and all that stuff. And he's the town loony that everybody picks on. And he goes into the diner and you got the guys sitting there at the diner that just decide to start picking on him when he comes in. And so as they're sitting there eating, all of a sudden some zombies come jumping through the window and start attacking everybody in the diner. And they go right after those two guys to start it off. But yeah, Ned comes to the diner because there's a waitress there that has always been nice to him, never treated him like crap. He's like, hey, I'm headed to my shelter. You can come with me. The world's coming to an end. It's happening now. And she didn't believe him until the zombies came jumping through the window, but she's always been nice to him and liked the guy and treated him decent. So she goes off with him. And while he's trying to talk her into it, of course, his truck gets run into and stuff. So they got to go on foot, and he just grabs what weapons they can. And she decides to go with the chainsaw, which I don't think was too smart because later on they come across, I don't know if it's a cop shop or Cabela's or what it is, but it's got a bunch of weapons in there. And she looks at him and says, nah, I'll stick with my chainsaw. So you're going to run out of gas. You don't have a gas can with you. So, so you should at least have some type of backup for it. But they do run across a couple other survivors and stuff as they're going. They're being attacked and they help them out. They help out one lady and then they run into another guy. And the town is just overrun. It's just all kinds of chaos that they have to get through. They don't make it to the safe house the first day, but they at least get to a building that they can secure themselves in. And then you get to see certain people get taken out throughout the first day and stuff. And it's your standard zombie attack, zombie apocalypse type storyline. It's kind of what you expect, but it has fun characters. I like the characters that are in here and stuff. So I'm definitely going to stick with it for now. It's done by Source Point Press. You got story by Luca Enoch and Stefano Vietti, script by Stefano Vietti, art by Alessio Moroni and Marco Itri. And then they got a variety of covers and stuff you can choose from, but I was happy with it. I'm curious how it's going to go and see what happens with it. But so far we only got a few people, so I'm not sure how many followers they'll end up with it, because it looks like pretty much most of this town is already ravaged already. So But yeah, another fun zombie apocalypse story for me.
Can never have too many of those.
No, they don't get boring ever.
Cool. All right. Well, that is going to do it. That concludes our segments. I want to do a couple plugs here at the end. We do have confirmation that in the very near future, we're going to have another creator spotlight because comic writer and artist Troy Dungara is going to join us here at the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. We've talked about his comics in the past. You'll know him from the recently released Lucky, which we have yet to review on here, but I think we'll talk about it on the future episode. As well as his creator-owned projects of Kid Slapshot, and then also doing the Mangolorian. So there's some of his comics. If you want to know a little more about Troy, you can check out tunesbytroy.com, and that is tunes with a Z. Tunes with a Z. By Troy.com. But yet we are going to have him on a future episode of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. Speaking of the creator spotlights, we had Matt Fyfe, who is the co-creator of Happy Astronaut, on a couple weeks back. He is going to be joining us soon again for something special, but he does have his comic, happyastronautcomic.gumroad.com, so you can check out the physical or the digital copies of Happy Astronaut, and there is more of that in the works. And then we have crimsoncowl.com. Just if you didn't have enough comics, well, how about a free comic? This is a web comic, and it's called Tales from the North, which is a free ongoing anthology series created by David Gloyd II. It is a dark fantasy comic based on the setting of his RPG campaigns. Chapters 1 and 2 available now, as well as a special, I think like a holiday special is up there. It was a little delayed due to some family issues, but they do have another issue up there at crimsoncowl.com. That is the only spot where you can get original comics created by members of this very comic book club. And if you want to reach out to us, Crimson Cowl Comic Club at yahoo.com. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, or maybe future questions for our letters page, any fun questions for us to answer, any personal questions about our reading hobby, feel free to send some emails over there and we can read them on the show. Subscribe to us on YouTube and hit that bell for notifications. Let people know that Crimson Cowl Comic Club is on YouTube. Just type in our comic club name and it'll pop up right there. And then the Crimson Cowl, which is all one word, on Instagram. Then, of course, subscribe to us on iTunes, Crimson Cowl Comic Club on iTunes. Like and subscribe and rate and review. That definitely helps us get some more exposure as the podcast continues to grow, even beyond the 250 mark here. We're always looking for some more listeners and viewers and fans and guests. So that is Crimson Cowl Comic Club throughout all of the social pages. You can find us out there. There is a spin-off podcast that Kirby is the creator of, which is Under the Cowl of MS. Do you want to get a little preview of what maybe have come out in the last week or what's to come from Under the Cowl of MS?
We dropped the videos off our podcast for now until I try some other formats. But this week we'll have some standard podcasts coming out again and maybe a couple videos, but next week for sure we'll at least have a unpacking video for Milwaukee Mighty Con, hopefully. And I do have a couple interesting things coming in the mail, so we should have at least 2 or 3 unpacking videos coming next week and some more comic videos. So
cool.
Keep an eye.
Subscribe to Under the Cowl of MS wherever you get your podcast all across the internet. And yes, next week we won't be recording a show because some of us will be attending the Milwaukee Mighty Con. So that is, we'll definitely be coming back and talking about some tales and adventures and what we picked up and who we met and all that stuff. So Mighty Con's been a fun time the last couple of visits. So we are excited to go again. But when we return, we will hopefully be having, as long as schedules work out, Troy Dungara on a future episode of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. So that is going to do it for this episode. This whole time, I've gone softer than a kitten's belly fur.
I've been stuck in a zombie elf apocalypse.
I've been really hungry for rats.
Am I the old ranger?
To be continued.